All right. What's up, guys? Hope you're feeling alive right now. I'm Micah Canale, and I want to welcome you to Young Adults Today podcast, where we talk about reaching young adults in our world today. And like always, I'm joined by my husband and co-host, Josiah. Josiah, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. We've got a walk-in already, a cup of coffee, some breakfast. We are looking forward to this conversation and lunch on the horizon afterwards, right?
So good. And hey, guys, if you're listening, thanks so much for tuning in, subscribing, rating, reviewing this podcast. That helps us reach more leaders with the message of young adults today, which, like Micah said right off the top, is all about reaching young adults in the next generation in our world. Today, we launch a new episode of this podcast every Monday morning, something to look forward to and hopefully help you start your week off strong and right.
That's right.
And be encouraged in your faith. And today,
here we go.
We're going to have some fun, right, babe?
We are going to have some fun. We are already in season 7,
Can you believe
episode 3.
Oh
so we have a
gosh.
fun guest behind the scenes today, and Josiah is going to give us a glimpse in who that person is.
Wow. Well, we'll introduce him in just a moment, but we're joined today by Reggie Hill. How are you, my friend?
I am awesome, man. So thankful to be with you guys, and just the chemistry that you guys have just watching this. I'm like, man, I love that. I just want to keep listening to the podcast. You guys just keep talking. Like, it's fine.
Well, it's going to be a conversation that you're involved with, and it'll be like a tennis match or a game of ping pong back and forth. But we'll talk and we'll listen and hopefully keep the listener on their toes as well,
That's
right?
right. We always want to do that.
But Reggie Hill is the young adult pastor at an amazing church in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which is Journey Church, multi-site church, a church that's been nothing but a blessing in Micah and I's life, in our marriage, in our family, in our ministry, and really just in the kingdom of God. I know that your leadership from the top on down believes in the next generation, invests. And so we just honor you, honor your leadership, and honor your church today. But Reggie, so glad to have you join us. Can you maybe kick things off just by helping us get to know you better and our listener too? Share some of your story, your life, your leadership with us today.
Yeah. So first born and raised in, Metro Detroit area. So grew up there, love, the Lions and hate the Packers. And now I'm in Wisconsin. And so, we probably have that in common. You guys are Vikings fans. I'm taking it. So,
I'm definitely a diehard Vikings fan in all Minnesota sports. And Mike, you can pray for her because.
We're from North Dakota over here, so we didn't have a team. So it was the Packers.
You skipped right over Minnesota.
I know. Well, hey, if they could pull out a win back when I was in 3rd grade, maybe I would have picked a better team. I don't know.
All I can say is the Midwest, the Central Division. We gotta go
rivals.
Change the topic, please, Reggie.
Yes. So I grew up in Detroit. I grew up in all those things and loved Detroit sports. And then was in Minnesota actually for about a year. That's where me and you first connected, Josiah. I was at a great church there in Minnesota for about a year, and then came back to Michigan and was at church in Grand Rapids for about 6 years. Almost 6 years in Grand Rapids first, and great Pastor Sam Rafkogo there, and got to serve in youth and young adults there. And then now have been at Journey Church in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where people are like, where in the world is that? But I moved here in a crazy season, actually. It was right. I moved here 6 days after the Jacob Blake incident and the Jacob Blake shooting. And so I actually moved here in the middle of like a city lockdown, right? We had curfew at 9:00. Like everybody had to be, I'm like moving. I'm getting like my moving trucks pulling in. I'm getting my keys to my apartment, and like the city is like on lock. So like my first week in the office, like we're doing revival services downtown and baptizing people. And I'm like, I don't even know where my office is yet. Like we're just going crazy. And it was just unbelievable moments of crazy breakthrough that happened. But that was like my first context of being in Kenosha. And I remember moving, I was getting ready to move, and I had everything locked in. And, the Jacob Blake things happened. Literally, like I wake up, I'm taking some time. I was visiting my parents in Detroit area. And I wake up to like some text like, hey, are you already moved to Kenosha? And I was like, no, why? And then I get a Twitter post of what happened. And I was like, oh, and my grandma's like, now, baby, you sure you want to go out there now? Like, I was like, I think we'll be okay, Grandma. Like, this is where God has me. I already signed the lease, so I gotta go at least, get my deposit, but yeah, so moved here in the midst of all of that craziness, and just God did some crazy things in the city, and really was like riots to revival kind of moments, and people were getting baptized right there where riots were happening one night, the next night prayer and baptisms and salvations were happening right there downtown. So it's really cool to see all of those things unfold, and so yeah, I've been here 6 months now, and getting ready and rolling with young adults, and all the things incorporated with just jumping into a new church and a new community and all that in the midst of a pandemic.
No kidding. Well, we know that we serve a God that turns those bitter moments into a sweet aroma offered back up to him, So even in the midst of chaos around us, like we can still serve Christ through it all. So it's so fun to see that you landed where you did, and you stayed, and you said yes, and God is using you. And we just want to kick off with some awareness, bringing forth the awareness that we all, as young adult pastors, ministry leaders, have an amazing opportunity to grasp and to reach out to the hearts of young adults. And we know that you've stepped into a role of taking over an existing ministry. So many of our listeners are taking over an existing ministry, wanting to strengthen it, wanting to cast vision, wanting to look at the leadership that is currently there, and maybe rise up some leaders that they know of, and just all those different tensions that you step into taking over a ministry of, who are my volunteers? Who's the core? How do I cast a vision? How have things ran and functioned prior to my arrival?
Totally.
And so we would just love to hear, so many of our listeners are in that similar boat. What is it like taking over an existing young adult ministry at the church you're at? And what would you say to encourage the people who may be in a similar season?
Yeah, I would just say, first of all, it was an absolute honor to step into a ministry like Journey, as we not just have the young adults campus at our Kenosha campus, but Beach Park and our other campuses at Beach Park and at Burlington, and even over in Lithuania, right? Like we've got campuses. So like even the multi-site idea is kind of new to me, stepping into something like that and what that looks like culturally speaking. But specifically for our Kenosha campus, like it was just such a blessing to step into something. And then, the ministry, I call it the ministry arc, that like Matt, I know who you guys know, who built an amazing ministry here. And I know he's in Minnesota with you guys doing some amazing work, Adventure now. And but he built an incredible team of young adults that were passionate about, all things young adults and seeing something take off here. They really were ready to see something take off. And I kind of came in to a team that just, hey, like we need a bus driver, right? We need somebody to drive this bus. We need somebody to really like step in and give us some vision, right? Like Proverbs 29:18, where there is no vision, a people perish. And I think that's some of like the team was like, all right, we're ready now. We're ready. And to the leader, I just want to say, to the leader that's stepping into somewhere, it's an incredible opportunity to step in somewhere. I often take the motive like, hey, I'm not going to like rip anything down before I know why it was built, right? There's this idea, if you guys have ever heard of like, my pastor in a former church used to say, like, if you ever come up on a fence and there's a turtle on the fence post, don't just take the turtle off. Ask the question, how did it get there? Right? Because obviously somebody put the turtle up there for a reason. The turtle couldn't have got there up on its own. And so before we take anything down, before we tear down a wall, ask yourself the question, why was it built? Before we tear down a fence, ask why it was built. Before we tear down ministries and rip things off and try to just do because we know what we do and what we've done at former places, ask yourself, why was it like this in the first place? Right? And many times the reason can be, the old adage is like, well, this is just always how we've done things. Okay, well then if we don't know the reason why we do things, but sometimes we walk into ministries and there's a reason that we do certain things. There's a reason why we step into things. I remember stepping into a youth ministry actually in Minnesota, and there was something they did, and I had no concept of it. It was like they played this music jam, and it was like a 2-minute like just party session, right? And the kid, every week it was the same song, and the students looked forward to it. And I came and I was like, "What is this? Like, why are we doing this?" But I had the wherewithal, and just it was Jesus and probably some really good mentors in my life that just said, "Hey, well, like, let's see it out for a season. Like before I just come in and say, hey, we're not doing that anymore. Like I remember we did it actually one week. I said, hey, we're not going to do that this week. And I had several students and leaders like, hey, why didn't we do that? Why didn't we do that? Oh, it was the interlude. Why didn't we do the interlude? I was like, oh, that weird thing that people were like jumping up and down and dancing. They were like, yes, we love. I was like, okay, like, hey, learn my lesson. Like, don't, it was back the next week, right? So ask yourself the question before we come in and tear things down, before we try to build up our own little, like, ask yourself, like, what are the parts that are here and why are they here? And then what can we do with it? I think I'm a sports guy. I told you guys in the front, I used to coach football and coach basketball, things like that. So like, I often ask the question, like when great coaches come into a team, especially in like football, right? The coaches are always changing. I find the best coaches don't try to make the system or the players that are there work for their system. Trust me, I'm a Detroit sports fan. Okay. We have a new coach every 16 months, right? Like we never have the right coach. Right. And so, but the best coaches look at the players
Wow.
and say, what system will work best for the players that are here? And we're going to run that system. Right. And instead, most coaches come in and say, this is my system. This is how I do it. And then if you don't fit the system, then I'm going to get you out of here. Right.
That's great to look at it like that.
And it's really about like, hey, what are the pieces that were here? Because God placed these people here. Right.
Wow.
This isn't a sports team. Like this isn't where they can just go across the country. Like these are people that we're serving, that are planted here, that are rooted here. We come in as a coach, as a minister, and say, okay, what are the pieces that are here, and what can we build? What did my leader want me to build? And then ultimately, like, what can we build with the pieces that are currently here?
Reggie, that is simply wisdom right there. I think for every pastor, leader, for everyone to take note on what you just said, is really vital, really key to look at why were things done the way they've done. And that's a great question to ask, whether you end up keeping them, because some things we should keep, and then other things they need to change.
Right.
And they were just doing things the way they've always been done. But asking that question provides such a degree of intentionality that I think we all need.
Right.
And we can alienate people, or we can honor people simply by doing what you said. And I think that one of the things that I think that also we can all pick up from what you just said is giving young adults a voice within a church. They have a voice when they lead their nonprofits.
Right.
Yeah.
They have a voice when they go to work. And to ask them, I think that whether or not we go with every decision or every interest that they have, I think people need to be heard. It's a legitimate need that they have, and we honor them when we give them a voice as a next generation. And I heard Carey Nieuwhof, he actually tweeted this. He said, when we have conversations about the next generation, let's be sure to include the next generation in those conversations.
So good.
And that leads into something that's a passion point for me. I know it's a passion point for Micah as well, and for you, and probably the person listening. And that's this, that churches have a massive opportunity to reach the next generation. Young adults ages 18 to 30, we're seeing a rise coming out of the pandemic in churches starting new young adult ministries across the board, across the state of Minnesota, across the country, across the Midwest. We're seeing a lot of churches also have leadership transitions where maybe somebody comes in and takes over or gets moved out. But why do you believe, Reggie, that young adult ministry is important and matters?
Yeah, I mean, I call this time in our lives, the 18 to 30, kind of like the great transition, right? That's what I label it. It's the great transition between we're not, we've got more resources than probably like high schoolers and junior hires, but we have more time than we will ever have in the future, right? You get a family, you get kids, and those things come into the picture. Some of us, that is in that same 18 to 30 range, but for some of us, I'm 30, still single, working on that, but there's a time where it's like, hey, we have more time now than ever. So how can we take these years and offer them to God, as a resource. I mean, if you're a leader listening to this right now and you don't have a young adults ministry, or maybe you're a pastor that listens to this and you're saying like, why? Like, there can be unbelievable momentum in your church. And we're seeing this in the pandemic. Young adults were the first ones to get Zoom calls going, to get online church going. It wasn't the 50, 60-year-old. It was the millennial that was saying, okay, pastor, hey, we can get on Zoom. We can push our services online. We can set something, we can make this happen. And if you listen, where there is no vision, the people perish. Young adults won't follow without a focus. Give them a focus. If you give them where we're going, what's the vision, what's the why. We have something I love here in our church context. People won't buy in until they weigh in, right? It's this idea of like sharing the last 5%. And we all get to share that 5%, right? Like top down, right? But we all have a voice at the table. And so young adults are ready. Like they have more passion, more fire, more focus, and more resources to make things happen. But the question is, do we have vision for what they're going to do?
Wow.
Like, I think when I stepped in, the most beautiful thing, when I stepped into my position here, my pastor gave me 3 things. He said, this is what I want our young adults to do. I want you to be on the local college campuses. I want you to build a connection with the college campuses too.
Love that.
I want you to develop a leadership pipeline. I want to develop leaders. I want us to disciple leaders that can serve among our church, that can be raised up in our church, that can potentially be hired within our church organization, right? And then thirdly, I want young adults to understand a heart of a servolution, which is like serving. We have a goal and a dream that 75% of young adults in our young adult ministry would be serving outside of our ministry. So what does that look like? That looks like serving in kids ministry, serving youth ministry, not making all the old people be greeters, but like, hey, how about let's greet, let's be an usher, like whatever we have to do, like let's get those things moving. We can run the store, we can run an iPad better than someone that's 55, right? Like, and not to say that they can't do those things, but like our time is now. We have more time than we ever will have. Well, we've had in the past when we had, 9 hours of school every day and sports and things like that. And we have more time than we ever will in the future because we don't have we don't have 3 kids and a mortgage and a house note and all the things that come with taking care of family first. And so we have this time in our season. I think of my dad. My dad got saved like late in life. He got saved like in his mid 30s. And my dad, when he got saved, he was opening and closing the building. He was over the youth ministry. He was helping the ushers. He was helping as a deacon. He was counting the offering every Sunday. Like he was doing it all. Why? Because he had the time. He realized like there's going to be a season when I have a wife, I have kids, and they're going to be my priority. But right now I don't have those things. And so we have to get over this millennial mindset of like, my time is my time.
Right.
And it's like, what can I do with this time to give it back to God?
Right.
So I think that's why it's so important to say like, hey, if you can leverage the resources and the focus and the passion of your young adults at your church, there can be unbelievable momentum that happens in your campuses and in your churches.
Absolutely. Reggie, I love that you say that. And when I was a student at business school back in North Dakota at a university, something that I learned that I still remember now, and it's just who, what, when, where, why, and how. Like questions to ask yourself in a business mindset, in entrepreneurial, in ministry, maybe a personal reflection time, like, who do I want to be? How do I get there? Why? And you're asking all these questions.
Yeah.
And we know like when you're leading a ministry, when you don't have vision, that people perish.
Wow.
And to hone in on what your mission statement is. What is our vision? Who do we reach? How do we reach them? What do we need to do to get them through the doors or make ourselves uncomfortable to get out on the streets, And
yeah, definitely.
I just love everything you just had just shared and said to us and our audience today. And one of the things that we're seeing many people maybe come against, I've not experienced this, but I've had many friends who are in this role who maybe started out in youth ministry and now they feel called to young adult ministry, or that position of young adult ministry has been offered to them.
Right.
And how in your experience have you managed this tension of transition out of youth ministry and into leading a young adult ministry without making it feel like youth 2.0.
Yeah.
Right? You have the 18-year-old be like, where's dodgeball? And the 30-year-old like, where's the coffee? You know, like
Exactly.
how do you manage that tension or that transition of not making it feel like youth 2.0, to put it bluntly, I guess.
Yeah, no. It's a very real thing. And I think some of the principles stay the same that we've done from youth to young adults, but also the focus is different. So like for us in our context, we do a monthly gathering. We don't do a weekly gathering. So just there, then and there, it creates this different kind of, it creates a different pace. I will say, I think that was the greatest transition for me was, like Wednesday is always coming in youth ministry,
Mhm.
right? If you're a Wednesday night, if you're a youth pastor, usually your service on Wednesday night is always coming. Whereas in young adults, like I've got 5 weeks. I've got 4 weeks before our next gathering. What does that mean though? That every one of our gatherings have to be home runs. So for me, it's like we don't just focus on Sunday the week of. No, I'm already planning out the fall. We just had a 3-hour planning meeting for what this season is going to look like coming into the summer, right? Like, so we are we are much more intentional. Not to say that youth pastors aren't as intentional, but I think we don't get the opportunity to miss, right? We don't get the opportunity to be like, oh man, you know what? We didn't really market that well, or we didn't really let people know what was going on because we may not see people for 2 months now. And so at our large group gathering, so we have a different context. So the pace for one is different, and then two, in youth ministry, one of the things we do is I always have said like, hey, we need to market to high schoolers and attract junior hires, right? Like if you age up, right? Like if I market to middle schoolers, our youth ministry, then like high schoolers gonna be like, I don't want to come. Like all they do is drink weird milkshakes, like But like if we market to high schoolers, middle schoolers look up and say, that's who I want to be.
Yeah,
That's
they
what
rise up. Yeah.
they rise up, right? And so for the 18-year-old that's coming to our young adults ministry, hey, yeah, we're not going to do like silly games every week. We may do some. Like last month we did Family Feud and it was super fun and it was awesome and it was great. But like sometimes, hey, worship may be 45 minutes and we're going to have coffee in the lobby. We're not going to have 9 square, right? Like there's just, it's a different vibe. It's a different setting. We're not going to have like bumping music and like lights going everywhere. No, we're going to have like chill, like I call it like lo-fi beats, right? We're gonna have coffee shop vibes, right? Because that's where young adults are. So we want like the lobby's gonna feel different. The lobby's gonna feel tall. We're not gonna have a bunch of booths everywhere. We have tall. So it's like, again, going back to Micah, we talked about this off air, aesthetics, right?
Right.
The vibe, the feel is different. And so when 18-year-olds walk in, it feels like an older crowd is there. Right. And so they rise up and say, okay, yeah, let me go get a hot chocolate. I don't really like coffee yet, but I'll get a hot chocolate. And so that's where we do it. And then honestly, it's coming back to the vision, right? I think for young adults, we have a specific vision. It's not to create another sub ministry. It's to empower young adults to be in the local church, right? To go to the big church, right?
Yep.
You call it youth ministry. Hey, like we're gonna be in big church on Sunday. You're like sit with us in big, but like no, like y'all are big church now,
Yep.
and it's time for you to not just show up to church, but be the church. And so that's where for us, like we want our young adults ministry to make sure that they're like, hey, this isn't youth group, right? I'm not gonna baby. I'm not gonna call your mom. Your mom's not gonna call me. Like
Hope not anyway. You never know.
You'd be surprised. I get calls and I'm like, hey, your 18-year-old, your 20-year-old can call me. I'll reach out and I'll pass on them and I'll love on them, but I'm not gonna chase down 20-year-olds to make sure that they're fall in love with Jesus. I'm gonna mentor and disciple the people that are here. Right. That's your job as a parent to make sure your kids. So I'm gonna push and motivate and encourage the young adults that I have to reach more young adults.
So good.
Reggie, that's amazing. I like that. I think in every question or aspect of this conversation so far, the word vision has come up, and something that your leadership did really well that I picked up on and observed is they outlined what's the vision of Journey Church. I believe, by the way, that the lead pastor or the senior pastor of a church, they're the bearer of the vision, like
vision
they cast the vision or really they determine the vision. And then as support staff or as different departments, we extend that vision. We can carry that vision. We can cast it too, but they really get that vision from God, and they are responsible for communicating and coming up with the vision. And then we're extensions of that. But something that Journey Church leadership did really well for you that I think will serve you well, it set you up for success off the start, is they outlined what their expectations were and were not. And that's so rare. And I think for the pastors listening, I talk with a lot of young adult ministry leaders who feel like they're struggling and they feel like they're floundering actually. And it's because of this. It's like they ask, what's the vision? And what's your vision for young adults?
What are we aiming at?
Yes, what's the target? And you said it best, Reggie, to quote Proverbs of without the vision, the people perish. And sometimes those people are our volunteers. They're the young adults, or maybe they're even the staff. And so if you're listening and somebody asks you what the vision is, please don't be offended. Be honored. Be honored in the fact that we want to carry that vision well and represent and extend that vision well. But the more clarity there is around vision and expectation, man, if I can ask you on behalf of young adult ministry leaders to cast that well, to communicate that well, it can probably not be over communicated or overcasted. And then the other thing, Reggie, that you touched on is this idea of the word chill. I want to talk more about chill because one of our dear friends, Steph McDonald, when we were on staff at Cedar Valley, she would
love Steph.
Right? She's amazing.
Amazing.
And Steph would come and lead many times for the young adult ministry, or she's done fall retreat now for Chi Alpha, or, working with us for the weekend, different things, a young adult conference. And one of the things that she told me, I was like, how was your experience, or what was that like for you? And she just said, the interesting thing about young adults that she's realized when you are a worship leader or a communicator or pastor, what you don't need to do is entertain them. There's a hunger. There's just a genuine authenticity that comes from them that you don't need to entertain them. The vibes can be a lot more chill. And the thing is
so good.
I think the reason behind that is they can rise up and they don't need to be entertained. They're drawn not to the hype, but to the hunger. Micah or Reggie, would either of you want to weigh in on that? Do you have thoughts on that?
I would just say, for one, like I've always, the thing that attracted me to young adult ministry was that the folks that are there want to be there.
Wow.
Right? Like nobody's making, like you're an 18 to 30-year-old, nobody's making a 26-year-old go to church.
You
Trust
probably
me.
drove yourself, right?
You drove yourself, you got an Uber, or you paid to go to, like if you're there, it's because you want to be there. And I think the beauty in that is like, hey, like you said it, we don't have to entertain them. We just have to educate them and encourage them and empower them. Right? Like we have to tell them like who Jesus is. I think the scary thing, of our generation now is that we've got TikTok pastors and YouTube pastors, and it's great, like that we're pushing the gospel, but it's like, do they actually know how to like exegete scripture properly? And like, that's where they're, and like our young adults are listening to these people, and we don't know. I don't know if they went to seminary somewhere, or if they just picked up a Bible last week and started discerning what they feel like the scripture says. Like that's dangerous, right? And so we're here as young adult leaders, as young adults pastors, to educate, to encourage, and to empower. Like we want young adults to know like why they do what they do. But the thing I love, like you said, like coming back to it, is like they want to be there. They don't have to be there. They could do anything on a Sunday night. Or in my last context, we had a young adult service every Thursday, and they wanted to be there. Like some of them had work in the morning, but they were there till 11 o'clock at night hanging out. We had a huge like volleyball culture. So playing volleyball, like that, we got intense ping pong, things like that. If they want to be there, they're going to be there. And just like high schoolers, as they get driver's license, right? Like you see the strength of your youth ministry at really that junior year. Like if you have a strong junior, senior class, like our youth ministry is really strong because kids don't have to come because they got driver's license, they've got jobs, they've got sports, they've got excuses, right? But yet they're still here. It's the same in young adult ministry. Like if they're there, it's because they want to be there, and we're creating an environment that is welcoming to them.
Right. Right. That's
I don't know
so
if you want
good.
to add anything to that, Micah.
No, I just think that you guys are just nailing it on the head when you say that is people are hungry and they want truth and they want to be loved. They want to live out a life. They're recognizing coming out of 2020 that they need community.
True.
Not only just
Yeah.
want community, they need community
100%.
on so many
100%.
different levels for mental health, emotional health, relational health. I mean,
spiritual health.
everything. It just encompasses. And we look at the Bible and it's like, well, what did Jesus do? He did life with 12 disciples. He did life with people. He ate with them. He ministered with them. He traveled with them. Like, so when young adults are going on road trips and camping trips and providing, I think the most fun to hear is young adults getting together outside of an event or an organized space that the pastors and leaders have provided for them.
Yeah.
So when they're like, oh, we went out to brunch, and it was like, all the girls got together and went out to brunch, and they become a more like 10 girls go out to lunch, and you just see natural, organic friendships taking place. And our biggest thing is like, Lord, I pray for the young adults of any ministry that if they come through our ministry or somebody else's, that they would find lifelong friendships,
So good.
not seasonal friendships or circumstantial friendships, but they would truly go deep and wide, obviously with the Lord first and foremost, but then with each other. And we also see so many people meet their future spouse coming out of young adult ministry.
Praise God.
Who are on fire for God, who are living a pure life, who want to not settle along the way.
Yep.
So I think as leaders, we have such a phenomenal opportunity to get to do life. Like they invite us into their lives. We don't invite ourselves or push our way through the doors. We have to earn a right to speak into their life, number one. Two, the moment we know and remember their name and they see that we care, they're bought in. Maybe to who we are right away, but then it's to Christ and then it's to the vision. Sometimes it's not always, the order of which we think it should be. Like, you need Jesus. No, they need a friend. They need you just to let them know, like,
you could
I
be
love you.
Yeah. Well, I think, young adults are coming to this context, and for the first time, like right when we're in grade school, right, our friends are the kids that we sit next to. Right.
Yep.
And then we get in the high school, middle school and high school. And maybe our friends are the people we do sports with or athletics with, or I sit next to class. We have 3 classes together and we have to study together. And all of a sudden we're friends. But now we come into the college context. We come into the work context. And how do I make friends?
Yep.
Wow.
Because now my friend's not sitting next to me for 8 hours a day.
Right.
Now I have to actually go out and make friends.
Effort.
Yeah, okay, now my Myers-Briggs, I'm 96% extroverted, okay? So like I can make friends with a plant, okay? Right here, my buddy.
You have,
so,
by the way.
Yeah. Tons of plants. I gotta make friends. I live by myself right now, so I got tons of plants. We don't talk or anything like that, but I take care of them. So, but like for the first time, I'm extroverted, and yet I've had I'm moving here. I'm like, I gotta make friends again. I gotta reach out and invite people over and do things and who do I vibe with? Who can I chill with? Who can I just be Reggie with and not Pastor Reggie? What are they how do I do this whole thing? So if I'm dealing with that and I'm 96% extroverted, how can I help? I know our young adults are dealing with that. I know in the midst of a pandemic when people are wearing masks and standing behind shields, I know it's harder to make friends than ever before. So we have to, as leaders, recognize that and create spaces where people can just say hi to one another. I think we were talking about this as a staff. Because of this pandemic, we've become socially distanced, right? The idea of socially, when really we probably should have called it physically distant, because now we're stepping into this. And we don't know how to socially engage with people anymore because we've been told, hey, we need to be socially distant, right? And it's really no, we should have just said, hey, we're going to be physically distant, but we're still going to engage socially.
And emotionally.
Because now it's I'm at a coffee shop and I'm getting my coffee and they're like, okay, here you go. You can pick your drink up down there. Or you can pay right here. There's no interaction. There's no social. There's no moment to how are you doing? What's your name? It's so I don't want to be too close to you or offend you or get, cough or whatever. And so we're behind the shield and we both got masks. We both got masks on and we're just thank you. And we're trying to get through these interactions so quickly that we miss moments of ministry that we can really have and moments of friendship. And And I mean, some of the closest people I had in my last city worked at a coffee shop that I love going to. And they would like make my drinks and be, hey, I'm going to test this drink out on Reg because he'll love it. And I'm like, I
Wow.
got free drinks all the time. But those are some of my greatest friends and people I got to actually minister to. And it was on the context of not being physically distant, but being socially distant. You know? And so that's what we're struggling. We're having to, as ministry leaders, like balance that out.
Yes. And I think that validates the call of God. Is our relationship with Jesus is best described as vertical, and our relationship with others, that our vertical relationship impacts a ton, is our involvement with the horizontal relationships with peers, with friends, with family. And at the intersection of those two things, I think, is where ministry really happens: vertical with God and horizontal with others. And Jesus is at the center of that. And that validates the call of young adult ministry. Is people are lonelier than ever, more anxious than ever. I read yesterday that 65% of people in our US population under the age of 35 are still single. And so this is very important. The role of young adult ministry leaders, campus pastors, college pastors, and anyone involved in the next generation, especially as it relates to discipleship and evangelism. And I would just say at the same time, the dynamic that we've been hitting on and describing is this: that young adults drive themselves. That's different from the parents who drive their family to church. It's different than, kids or youth ministry, different than family ministry. It's different from any other ministry in that these are truly adults. And that makes it really rewarding because the hungry people show up. It also makes it very unique in the concept of challenging. It's a challenging ministry. It's hard to get things started. It's hard to strengthen a ministry. So I want to validate the call of the listener. And I also want to resonate with the challenges that you are facing. And then the Spirit of God has anointed you in your context to ask, why are things, like Reggie said, it was his question, not mine, but why are things the way they are? And we need to do contextualized ministry. And the Holy Spirit has placed you where you are for such a time as this to do ministry. And that brings us to one of our favorite segments of the show today, Reggie. It's called Final Thoughts, 5 and 5, which is 5 rapid fire questions in 5 minutes. Are you up for it?
I'm ready. I'm ready. I could do final 5 in 3 seconds.
Okay. Well, here we go.
All right.
If you could describe yourself and your soul right now, as we are talking, in 3 words of any language, by the way, what would they be?
Any he threw the any language. Okay. I would say I'm a dreamer. I would say I'm compassionate. And I would say I'm kind of funny. Pretty funny.
Excellent.
Accurate too. Very true.
Right.
Those are accurate.
All right, Reggie. Question number 2. If you could meet one of your favorite HGTV show hosts, who would it be? Couple or individuals? Who would that be?
It's got to be Chip and Joanna. Come on.
Woo! There we go.
Got to be Chip and Joanna.
I concur.
Hey, Chip and Joe, if you're listening, we can have you and Reggie come back on. It'll be fun.
Yes, I'd love to meet them on the Zoom. Well, I'll come down to Waco.
Waco, there it is.
Go Baylor Bears just won the NCAA championship.
Let's go.
They sure did.
Let's go. So, Reggie, question 3 is the curveball. If this keeps Mike and I engaged, on our toes, having fun, if you could ask us any question today about anything, what would it be?
I would say my question would be for you guys: what's one thing you guys do to intentionally love one another better?
You want to first?
Yeah, I'll answer on Micah's behalf. One of the things that she does, she is the most intentional person I've ever met. So if I'm going to go speak at a weekend event and not, for whatever reason, not be with her and our daughter, she'll write me a note and it'll be in my car. And it'll be coffee made or coffee picked up. And so, I mean, Micah knows what words I need. She knows that her prayers have power with the Holy Spirit and over me in my life, and her words carry weight. And she often, and she always uses them to encourage me, to strengthen me, to build me up, and to carry me maybe when I'm down. And so, I mean, man, she also helps us make sure that on our calendar, there's a date night and we'll do something fun. And so then what we like to do is every other. She
Right.
plans a week, I plan a week. She plans a date, and then the next time I know, okay, it's my turn.
Right. Having the other person in mind of what they would probably want to
Yep.
do, whether it's rock climbing or whatever.
I love that. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll answer the same way you did. I think one thing that Josiah's really empowered me to do, when we were dating, I asked him this question. I go, what is one thing that if I asked you to stop doing, it would like internally kill you and diminish like your dreams or whatever? And he had answered
Wow.
his. And he's like, well, Micah, what about you? And I was like, if you ever stopped asking me to stop creating, stop creating content through writing, stop creating a space where we can have a family, stop painting, restoring, refurbishing, demoing, whatever. I'm like, if you ask me to do that, like creative outlet is like, it should be a love language. Like if I had a weekend to do whatever, my word, this house would be out of control. But that's what I responded with. He's really empowered me. He's like, Micah, be as creative as you want. I'll take our daughter. You go, you have a couple hours, whatever you need. So he's really empowered me and encouraged me to stick with that, even when I'm like, do we even have the finances to do that? I'm like, okay, $5.99 Hobby Lobby paint. Okay, what are we gonna paint?
She sees the paint before she sees the project. Come
Yes,
on.
I do. I sure
that's
do. I
true.
envision, I'm like, oh, that door. Yep, that's the color. Salmon pink. You got it. So I think he's really empowered me to be me in that sense of creativity, and I don't know, not be frustrated in the process if the house looks like a disaster for a couple of days or hours.
Love it. Love it.
That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. And back to you.
Yeah. Question number 4. Reggie, what is your greatest fear in ministry?
Okay. So I think for me, my greatest fear would be building the wrong thing.
Wow.
I think oftentimes in ministry, especially in young adult ministry, you can build a young adult ministry 15 different ways. And I'm much more, I heard this said one time, and I connected with it so well. I think it was Darius Daniels who said he's much more designer architect of a leader than he is a builder. I can build, I can put things together, but I'm much more of like a give me the blueprint and I can right. We talked about the interior designer, Mike. Like I can architect something, I can design something that will look great. We can have a meeting and I can draw, everything that'll happen on the board and I can map it. Like that's Enneagram 7. I know you guys are Enneagram people. I'm Enneagram 7. So like I can digest a lot of I can synthesize a lot of information very quickly, download it, digest it, regurgitate it, map it out, clean it out, and then I want to move on to something else. Like if I gotta my fear is that I would build the wrong thing. That we would get 3-4 steps down here, and in the process of dreaming, in the process of doing, in the process of pulling things apart and rebuilding something, I'm like, oh wait, this was supposed to look like that.
The wrong blueprint.
I got the wrong blueprint.
Wow.
And I think the beautiful thing of being where I'm at is that they've handed me the blueprint and I keep it on my board. I have a board. I have a giant dry erase board in my office. If anybody comes to my office, it's the first thing they see is like everything on this board. And they're like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, I have one of my interns, Michaela. She rewrites everything so it looks nice because I've got chicken scratch handwriting. I couldn't look at that. But I keep that vision up on the board. Like that stays there because that's my blueprint. Right. And I've got to constantly look at the blueprint and say, okay, if what we're about to do doesn't hit one of those 3 things, we can't do it because it's going to pull us away from the blueprint. And all of a sudden, what we build is not going to look like what we planned. So that would be my greatest fear, is that we build something that ends up being not what we designed to build in the first place.
That's great.
Oh my gosh, that I think is something that we should all reflect on and be aware of, that maybe tendency, the natural tendencies that we have, as well as that propensity that we, naturally, probably all of us drift from vision and drift from Jesus. So those intentional roadmaps or blueprints that can keep us on track, the checkpoints, the mile markers, the accountability, and the teams. And that's amazing. And our 5 of 5. The last question for you today, Reggie, is what legacy do you want to leave behind when it comes to young adults in this next generation in our world today?
I think, that's a great question. I think it would be that we built a ministry that built people and not platforms, right? That we decided, we took a stance and said, hey, we're going to take this time not to like I think sometimes we build a platform on top of people instead of building a platform for people to step upon.
Wow.
And we're here to serve the vision of our leader and ultimately of Jesus, right? I'm here to serve Pastor Kevin and Pastor John, who are my lead pastor, my executive pastor. And I really want it to be said of me that our ministry, that we built something that drew people, right? That drew people in a deeper relationship with Jesus and each other's. Like we built something that young adults would find their people and they would find their purpose, right? That they would find who they are in Christ, and that they would find others that are like it, like them, in the same vein of life, in the same figuring this kind of like, thing out, right? We're all in this kind of mitosis stage of like, what is this? Who are we? Like, we're all trying to figure this out, but yet here we are now, and we built something, and I found my best, like I've often said, you should find your best friends should be in the church. The best friends, the people that you are closest to, should not be the people that are at work, shouldn't maybe even be the people you grew up with in elementary school. Like, your best friends should be those that are like you in every single way, right? Like, I love that the scriptures said it, that in the early Acts church, it said that they grew up and they had everything in common. They had everything in common. As they began to do life together, they had everything in common, and they were together, right? They were together and had everything in common. That's what I love, that passage of scripture in Acts. And so that's what I want our young adults to look like, is that we are together and we have everything in common.
That's so good. What a great message to leave our listeners with. What a great thought process or thought-provoking questions that you've kind of tapped into that we were able to pick your brain on. And I would just encourage the listener, if you feel like maybe you're off course, maybe you have the wrong blueprint or floor plan in front of you, if we're going to talk the creative side of HGTV, I could talk about that all day, but to recognize that, if we miss by an inch, we can miss by a mile.
Wow.
And we don't want to be so off course, whether it's our heart, our soul, our mind, our ministry, our family. We want to completely be in cadence and in balance with God and with the Holy Spirit, and have him be at the center of everything, and recognizing why do we do what we do, and to challenge like question. I love what Reggie had said, like, if there's something in the ministry, why was it put there to begin with? Is it a time waster, or is it a pillar that which we will stand on, that is one of the foundational elements of who we are, what we do, why we do it? And Reggie, we are so grateful and so thankful for you today. So thank you for joining Josiah and myself. And anything else, Josiah?
We just appreciate you a ton, man. This has been so much fun.
Oh, dude, it's been such a blast to be with you guys. I love everything that you guys are doing. We're only like 5 hours apart, so I got to get out there and connect with you guys and see all that you're doing in Minnesota for Minnesota young adults. And I'm like, how can we bring that to Wisconsin?
Let's go.
How can we do more and more? We talked about that, Josiah, before off air, and like, just would love just connecting more and more with you guys. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, that is so fun. So thank you so much for joining us, Reggie, and our listeners. And you can find more about Reggie Hill and the Journey Young Adults when you connect with us at the website at youngadults.today, as well as across all of our platforms at youngadults.today. Until next time, this is Micah and Josiah signing off with Reggie Hill.
Thanks so much, guys.